Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly mind-bending research paper that reveals a hyper-precise mathematical architecture hiding right inside our DNA. Honestly, if you've ever thought of biology as just this messy, chaotic soup of mutations, this analysis of the single-stranded DNA sequence of the entire human genome is absolutely going to flip your perspective. We're talking about strict, universal mathematical laws that literally dictate the building blocks of human life. So let's dive right into this long-standing mystery. For decades, scientists have debated why our genome contains so much so-called junk DNA. You know, those vast, sprawling sequences that just don't seem to code for any specific proteins. From an evolutionary standpoint, it seems incredibly inefficient for nature to carry around billions of useless letters, right? The energy cost alone makes you wonder how it ever survived. Well, this paper suggests a wild alternative. This junk isn't an accident at all. Instead, it might actually be a mathematically perfect code, a global numerical meta-architecture that unifies and controls the entire genome. To start unpacking all this, a quick refresher on how the researcher actually looked at the data. The genome is read in what we call codons. Think of them as triplet groups of genetic letters, like TCG or AAA. These act as the core structural units or reading frames of our genetic code, and there are exactly 64 possible combinations of these codons. By meticulously analyzing the frequencies of these 64 unique codons across the massive 3 billion letter expanse of the human genome, the true scale of this mystery really begins to take shape. Section 1. Clue number 1. Hidden symmetries in DNA. Okay, as we look closer at these codon populations, some bizarre and frankly beautiful mathematical symmetries start emerging. And that brings us to our first major clue. When you sort all 64 codons by their overall frequency in the genome, from the absolute most common down to the least common, they pair off into these perfect odd and even gradations. They mirror each other almost flawlessly, stepping down in a beautifully synchronized hierarchy. Every single odd-ranked codon has a corresponding even-ranked alter ego. It is literally like finding a perfectly balanced seesaw right at the molecular level. The sheer scale of this symmetry is what's truly mind-boggling here. If you take the total population of all 32 odd-ranked codons, you get roughly 474 million. Take the 32 even-ranked codons, you get roughly 473 million. These two distinct halves of the entire genome correlate with an astounding 99.9995% accuracy. It forms a perfect structural partition right down the middle of our DNA, proving an underlying balance that totally defies random chance. But wait, it gets stranger when the researcher compared the total population of all 64 codons combined to the population of just the two most frequent ones, which are TTT and AAA. The ratio equals exactly 13, not roughly 13, exactly 13. That points us straight toward the famous Fibonacci sequence. It's a huge hint that deep, universal mathematical constants are hardwired into our biology, scaling our life in the exact same way a seashell or a spiral galaxy scales. We can see this mathematical scaffolding even more clearly by folding the data into 4 quartiles based on frequency. Group the 32 most frequent codons together, and we find their population is exactly twice as large as the bottom 32. A flawless 2-to-1 geometric pattern starts taking shape across the entire sequence. Watch what happens when we put it all together. When you combine all 4 quartiles into a pie chart, their statistical ratios perfectly form the universal peace symbol. No joke, the math literally draws the symbol. The ratios connecting these quartiles lock into perfect clean integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is rock-solid proof that a highly structured mathematical law is constraining the physical makeup of our genes into a rigid geometric distribution. Section 2, the reveal, the 3 genomic numbers. So the ultimate takeaway here is that this entire complex web of single-stranded human DNA can actually be defined, predicted, and modeled by just 3 master numbers. The first genomic number is 1. This is a universal constant across all species, representing a principle called Chargaff's second rule. Basically, it dictates that even on a single strand of DNA, the number of A bases closely equals T and C closely equals G. No matter what living thing you're analyzing, this baseline symmetry of 1 is always going to be present. The second genomic number is exactly 2. We touched on this just a second ago. It exists because the population of the 32 most frequent codons is precisely twice the size of the 32 least frequent ones. This sets up a rigid duality within our DNA, providing a core mathematical anchor for human genetics. And the third number is phi, or 1.618, famously known as the golden ratio. This ratio dictates the proportional relationships between the remaining clusters of our genetic code. It's wild to think about, but this is the very same ratio governing the spirals of galaxies, the geometry of the pyramids, and the arrangement of leaves on a stem. And it's perfectly fine-tuning the structure of human DNA. Now, when you push these three numbers, 1, 2, and phi, through the matrix of the universal genetic code, something incredible happens. The matrix acts like a holographic lens. Using just these three values, a cellular automaton can perfectly reconstruct the exact populations of all 64 codons across the human genome, with over 99.99% accuracy. Think of a cellular automaton like a simple computer program, kind of like Conway's Game of Life if you're familiar with that. Using just that basic framework and our three master constants, the DNA sequence is basically projected into existence. Section 3. Beyond humans, species diversity. Because this mathematical scaffolding, it exists across the entire tree of life, not just in humans. Check out this jaw-dropping variance. Chimpanzees share our exact genomic numbers of 1, 2, and phi. But different species rely on entirely different mathematical constants to build their physical reality. For example, the Arabidus plant and the C. elegans worm share a totally different set of numbers based on variations of the golden ratio. The malaria parasite, yeast, even the HIV virus, they all have their own unique three-number mathematical signature that defines their biology. Section 4. A universal geometric constant. Buckle up, because things take a mind-bending twist here as we zoom way out from biology into theoretical physics. Researchers actually found another master layer of math hidden in our biology. The entire human genome self-organizes around a highly specific universal attractor. Mathematically, it's expressed as 3 minus phi all divided by 2. Calculate that out, and you get 0.69098. Our whole DNA single strand is fundamentally tuned to this exact value. So why is that specific number such a big deal? Because this exact same ratio flawlessly models the geometry of a perfect sphere used in theoretical quark physics. A sphere with a radius of 3 minus phi divided by 2 has a volume of 3 minus phi and a cross-section of 3 divided by 2. Down to a tiny fraction of a decimal point, the physical masses and ratios of our DNA bases perfectly mirror the mathematical blueprint of atomic structures. It is a staggering numerical resonance, connecting the biology of life directly to the quantum physics of the universe. Section 5. Balancing the human genome. Let's loop back to the resolution of our original mystery regarding why the genome contains so much junk DNA in the first place. That so-called junk DNA isn't just sitting there uselessly, it's actually doing something incredibly vital. It provides the exact numerical redundancy needed to perfectly tune the atomic mass of our extremely fragile DNA strands. It ensures that the two massive strands of the human genome balance each other out with immaculate precision, stabilizing the entire molecule so that life can actually exist. This highlights a really profound duality in our genome. It's a lot like that famous M.C. Escher painting, Form and Substance. There is a second layer of hidden structure, dividing the whole human genome into two concepts, information and redundancy. The physical substance of our protein-coding genes is perfectly balanced and tuned by the mathematical form of the junk DNA. They're two halves of an interconnected masterpiece. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. If the very building blocks of our biology are structured by the geometric constants of the universe, locked in by the golden ratio and the math of quantum spheres, what other cosmic secrets are we carrying around inside our own cells? The blueprint of life isn't just chemistry, it's a profound mathematical symphony. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and keep questioning what you're made of.